What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Real Ones Canes podcast. That man next to me virtually is Cam Underwood, managing editor, State of the U. Go to stateoftheu.com. It is simply the best website that covers the University of Miami. Follow Cam on Twitter at Underwood Sports. I'm Brian the Beast London. I can be followed at Miami Radio Beast, where I may or may not make terrible decision making in my social media posting, but that's neither here nor there.
We've all been there, man. You know, I have a friend of mine who is a longtime journalist from when he worked down here, and he would be the one person who would text me on the side when I was going crazy and just say, "Stop." And sometimes when I get going in that space, I hear that person's voice. I'm not going to put their name out there, but I hear that person's voice. It's like, "Cam, stop."
Yeah, I need that. I need that person. Listen, we need to dig in because the University of Miami is playing at home at Hard Rock Stadium in a national championship game less than a week from right now when we are recording this. So we need to dig in, man. It is all hands on deck as Indiana comes to town. And listen, we can get all of the knowledge we can from, the local people, the former Miami Hurricanes. But you know what? Cam and I decided we need some unbiased opinion.
Let's expand the network.
Right, about this game. And a guy that is absolutely blowing it up all over your feeds, all over the socials, all over the YouTube, is a guy that actually played at Penn State. His name is Landon Tengwall. He played offensive line. He's a big nasty. And he joins us right now on the Real Ones Canes podcast. Landon, thank you for taking the time, my friends.
Yeah, Cam, Brian, appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited. I have really enjoyed studying Miami. I really didn't do much at all this year. I think I watched some of the Notre Dame game, but outside of that, haven't done much. So it's been a pleasure. I actually just got done texting my buddy. He said he was like bored. And he's a former player, defensive coordinator. I said, yo, go watch some Miami defense if you're bored, because that's something it's just fun to watch. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And man, it's been a pleasure. So one more time, here we go. And it is at home. So it's going to be a great one.
Well, I have a question first. Before we get to dig into the X's and O's, which I know you're amazing at, as a proud Penn State alum, a proud lover of all things Big Ten, what do you make of the rise of Indiana? It's kind of shaking up the world of college football.
Yeah, I actually just got done earlier doing a show with Jake Butt, who's kind of like the voice of Big Ten, and we were talking about it. And it's nothing like you've seen from any other school. And Indiana was the most losing Power 4 football program in the history of college football. That's how bad they were. And Cignetti just came in and implemented his culture. And you see, he kept both of his coordinators. I mean, these are guys that were with him at IUP. Making absolutely no money at a D2 institution, and they followed him, Elon, JMU, and now to Indiana. And people are trying to say, do we want to follow the Cignetti blueprint? We even have people in Penn State here, as everything's changing from James Franklin to Matt Campbell. And it's like, hey, do we want to follow what Cignetti's done? And kind of the answer I have is I don't know if anybody can replicate what Cignetti's done. He is a special individual, but he understands how to create an elite culture. I think that's the biggest thing, that the foundation that he's built, it doesn't have any cracks in it. And that is what has allowed Indiana to be what they are, have no former 5-stars on their roster. His 2 recruiting classes that he's had since he's been there, they've gotten a total of 3 4-stars. They haven't been inside the top 30 nationally in recruiting yet, but you keep seeing what they're doing. They supplement through the transfer portal. They find that talent. And they find the fits for their program. So it's been crazy. I'm happy. I love that we're getting we're just getting parity in college football. And I think we've been wanting that for a long time. And listen, Indiana coming to this one, if Indiana does find a way to win, they would be the 3rd Big Ten team in a row, and it'd be 3 different Big Ten teams to win in a row. So, Big Ten's trying to bounce back a little bit after years of SEC domination, but they have, listen, it's like a Cinderella story for Indiana. But listen, Miami can kind of be the villains in this one, and I think that's what's exciting. And that's the mindset I would get into if I'm, especially these guys just on defense. It's just like I get to get after Mendoza, who's just this golden. He's the golden boy, golden arm, Heisman winner, and it's like, all right, let's crash this party.
So let's start there. Can the University of Miami get after Mendoza? Their offensive line's really good, man. And listen, Bain and Mesidor and Moten and the entire University of Miami front, along with linebackers like Torrey and Keontae Scott Blitzen and all this stuff have had good success in the postseason getting after quarterbacks. But how do you see it on film? How does it look? What are the chances that University of Miami can do what you just said and get after Mendoza?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that I see, like, it's similar to Miami's offense in the sense that very often the ball's going to get out of Mendoza's hand very quickly. Now, on the flip side of what you get is it's either these quick hitches on the outside where Mendoza catch it and he just fires it out really quick. On the flip side, what you get from this offense, from this Indiana offense, is also these long developing routes where Mendoza's back there for a while. So it's kind of like one or the other generally. And so there's times where he holds on to the football. Now, I'm not saying this just because I'm on, a Miami podcast here. I have worries about the Indiana offensive line, especially, going against the best defensive line in college football. I'm going to have worries for anybody. Let's be clear. And I've said this to multiple people. You don't stop Bain, Mesidor, everybody, the interior. I think Scott's been rushing at a really high level as a pass rusher. You don't stop these guys. You can find ways to slow them down. So I'm doing a full film breakdown just on the Indiana 2 offensive tackles and then Bain and Mesidor. And I'm diving in deep into every single aspect of both of their games. So I'm excited for that. But studying this, I will tell you, so everybody loves Carter Smith, the left tackle for Indiana. I think he's a very talented player. I think his technique is questionable and his athleticism is questionable. And I think he's gotten away with some holdings. As you guys have seen, the Big Ten refs, it's not like a fake thing. Like, it's real. Big Ten refs don't call holding. And so I found him to have struggles at times. Now, he hasn't allowed a pressure in like 4 games. So if you look at the stats, it's like, oh, you sound crazy. I'm just telling you what I've seen on tape. And if you want to watch over on my channel, it'll probably be up by the time this is up. I dive into it. He's got some problems in pass pro where he can really get grabby and outside and doesn't have a great punch. Now, on the other side, you kind of have a mixture at right tackle. So Khalil Benson's been their starter pretty much all year. He got banged up. He's kind of been on a short leash. Then they have brought in a Johnny, who is kind of their backup right tackle. He played most of the Alabama game, and then Khalil Benson played most of the Oregon game. So we don't even really know who for sure is going to start at right tackle, but these are both guys that have had their own struggles. I like Bain and Mesidor versus anybody, but especially in this game, like I think it's going to be a real task against, for Mendoza to have to be worried about this. Now, the one thing I do want to be careful of, and you kind of saw this against Marcel Reed, against Texas A&M to a degree, is Mendoza can scoot. Like, he can get loose. And so you got to be careful if you're these wide 9 techniques, where Bain and Mesidor, especially on third down, they like to get wide and rush upfield. You need to be careful that you don't let the tackle kind of just run you upfield, and then there's this huge cavity of a B gap, and Mendoza doesn't have anything, and he can just take off, because I think his legs are maybe the most underrated part of his game. But I look across the board, the right guard, Bray Lynch for Indiana, he can be very aggressive in the run game, and he can move people. And look, and the run game, I think, is where these guys excel even more. But talking pass pro, it's another guy I have some questions about. I have some questions about his ability to actually move. When they pop Bain and Mesidor inside, I would absolutely do that. If I'm Jason Taylor, I'm looking at this, I'm saying, hey, we're gonna get up matched up against these guards. Now, Drew Evans at left guard, I think is the best player on this offensive line. But I'm lining up. I'm saying, hey, if I can get Bain in that 4-eye, which is like right inside the offensive tackle, rushing on third down against this right guard, Bray Lynch, I want that all day long. And I guarantee you, Bray Lynch is going to find himself on his face, because he's on the ground way too much on this tape. So I think I look at this and, like, run game, this is a mauler offensive line unit for Indiana. But in the pass pro game, and shout out to Pat Coogan in the middle, Rose Bowl MVP, he has been great. I studied him at Notre Dame. I think he's really, really good, and it's super athletic. But I really like this Miami defensive line in the pass rush game. I don't think anybody has an answer for them. And I'm even going to do a cut up here on Twitter in a little bit. You see the chirping heads on Twitter saying, oh, Bain and Mesidor, they weren't existent in the college football semifinal game. And that could not be further from the truth. So I'm telling you, I'm curious to see what Mendoza and Shanahan, their offensive coordinator, like, what are we scheming up here? They're going to do things to protect Mendoza. They're going to move the pocket. They're going to get him into boots. They're going to get him into sprint out protection, where they're just running the whole offensive line. because I don't think he can just sit back there like he normally does. And Mendoza holds onto the ball fairly long. He has an average time to throw of 2.7 seconds, which is, let's say, inching closer to the longer side than it is the shorter side. And obviously Carson Beck's at like 2.35 seconds, which is the fastest of any quarterback in all Power 4 football. So I think you're going to get your opportunities to really get to rush against these offensive linemen. And I'm just putting it down right here. Everybody's going to say they love this Indiana left tackle. I'm telling you, he is going to have problems.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's, good to hear from the Miami perspective. And we know that this team is built in Mario Cristobal's image, from the inside out. I just want a quick follow-up on the pass game with Mendoza. So we played him at Cal last year.
Yep.
Only went 11 out of 22, but he had almost 260 yards because they basically dialed up scheme breakers for our bad defense, and they hit all these home run throws basically in the first half. He didn't do much in the second half. Are there things in Miami's secondary that you see that Indiana could try to exploit in a similar way with a double move or a wrinkle on something that they've done trying to break the rules of coverage that Miami's employed?
Yeah, I think these Miami DBs have honestly been really impressive. And that was the big storyline going into the Ohio State game. It was like, oh, you're going against Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith. And it was seatbelt Shawty in there just strapping them down, except for that deep throw to Jeremiah Smith. So, I think they have been impressive. My biggest thing that I'm curious about is how much room are you going to give these Indiana wide receivers? Are you going to allow Mendoza to have the underneath stuff? Because I'm just telling you right now, if he sees 7-8 yards of off coverage, meaning like those DBs are the line of scrimmage is here and they're 7 yards off, Mendoza, if they live and breathe in the RPO game. So if it's inside zone and if he sees off coverage, boom, it is out there. So I question, first off, how much space are you going to give them? Because they didn't give Julian Sam much space. He loves those same RPOs, and they were breathing down those wide receivers' necks. Now, the other question for this is, Mendoza's going to take those shots. And yes, you're right. Elijah Surratt, Indiana's wide receiver, he is big on double moves. And then Charlie Becker, who has emerged for Indiana this year, really on the back half of the season. He came on against Penn State. I think coming into the Penn State game, he had 6 career receptions for 120 yards. And he had more in that game. He had more yards and receptions in that game. And he's just become this 6'5", go up and get it target. So not only do you have these these plays where they're going to try to take these double moves, they're going to try to hit a deep post, those type of things where you do have to stay true to your defense. And, we saw Texas A&M hit that deep ball. I think it was the Craver. And there was really just a miscommunication by the Miami on the back end. He just ran free. So those aren't things I look at and, as it's not something that's been repeated the rest of the playoffs. So it's happened from time to time. But the biggest thing I'm looking at, honestly, is just the playmaking ability. They're going to throw jump balls to Elijah Surratt. They're going to throw back shoulders. Can you jam your arm in there and get it out? Because against Oregon, they threw footballs where the coverage was perfect. And guess what? They still completed it, because that's how this offense operates in Indiana. They just execute to a sickeningly degree for the defense. It's just, you watch them, you're like, what the hell? How did they just do that? And then, like I said, on top of that, they are going to use Charlie Becker's size to their advantage. They're going to throw jump balls. They're going to have him run, a post over the middle, and Mendoza's just going to put it up at 11 feet and let him just go get it high. So that's the thing I think you're facing the most, is just who's going to make more plays, not as much there's going to be the cat and mouse game of the shots you're taking in, like you said, those double moves. But for me, it's just more, can these Miami DBs make the plays, or I guess stop these Indiana wide receivers from making the plays that they have really made all year?
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely good information about, the RPOs and making the comparison to what Ohio State runs and how they ran it and everything. And, just to continue on that, obviously Xavier Lucas is going to miss the first half of this game on a BS targeting from the semifinal. And so, you have that. Damari Brown has been out for several weeks. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. And then, with our number 4/5 corner, true freshman Jabari Antoine, who came in at the end of the semifinals, might have to rotate in also. So, yeah, that's definitely a tall task, because this is a very, very good team and a very good offense. And speaking about that offense, Indiana is both prolific and diverse in their run game. They have 2 running backs almost at 1,000 yards, a third one at 500, number 12 in the country in rush yards per game. They're just about 220 with, 33 tugs in 15 games. So they run the ball, and they run it well. how can Miami affect them defensively to kind of take away some of that space in the ground game?
Yeah, so this Indiana offense, and really both these offenses, this is going to be the most gritty game that we've seen all college football playoffs long. These are two, you hear Mendoza and you got the wide receivers, and so you think like, oh, this offense just slinging it around. They are, but that's not where they live. Like that's where they eat is they're running inside zone. They're going to run some pin and pull. They're going to get outside, but they are just trying to run it down your throat for 5 or 6 yards a pop. That's where they live, and they just want to grind you down. And then when they start grinding you down, that's where they hit their explosive plays. And that's sometimes a big thing that I'm looking at here is the not only the contained by the defensive ends. And look, Ruben Bain Jr. is the best contained defensive end that there is. He puts hands in, he will dent it down, and he makes sure. I think we can all remember the Ohio State play in our head where he kind of lost contain, and then he just turned, run, and just completely cut off the outside run. And so like I don't have as much worry about him there. But my biggest thing, is Keontae Scott, is Mo Torre. Like these guys, can they make sure they keep contained? Because what they're going to do is Indiana loves to just spam inside zone. And what Black and Hemby do a ton of is they bounce it outside. And the reason why it works is because they see this inside zone angle, the defense does, and everybody just kind of collapses in. And so the running backs will press. And when everybody's sucked in, one cut and boom, I am outside and I'm racing you to the edge. So really, I'm looking at tackling from the cornerbacks, tackling from the safety room, from the linebackers. That's going to be huge in this one because it's that's what you got to do against this Indian offense. You can't have those miscues. And I think a thing that's some of the biggest miscues is obviously we saw not capitalizing on turnovers. That's one of them. And you have to do that against this team. But limiting those explosive plays, and the biggest way to limit explosive plays is to tackle well. So I did think there were some missed tackles by this Miami defense in the semifinal game that they would have liked to have back. And so that's something I'm looking at. Like I said, especially when they bounce it outside. But really just this rushing attack, it is going to be physical. They are going to get vertical, and they're just going to try to move you for, like I said, it's 4 to 6 yards a pop, and that's what they're looking for. And the reason they've just been so good is because they're consistent at it. And then it's hard because like I said, maybe 60, 70% of these runs have an RPO attached to them. So I talk about, hey, these cornerbacks need to be good when they're bouncing it outside, but these cornerbacks are also worried about the fact that I got Elijah Surratt running just a quick little, back shoulder fade or just a quick hitch, and I need to be on top of that. And that's what makes it so difficult. They're so good at what they do. They do the simple stuff correctly, and they do it just ad nauseum, just over and over, and they don't get bored with it. I think that's the biggest thing. You get these offenses sometimes that will understand, we're running the ball well, and they get bored, and it's like they want to. I mean, we even seen it with Miami. It's like, we're just grinding them down. I'm bored. Yeah. Let's run a trick play. Let's put Malachi Tony at quarterback. No, don't do that. That's what Indiana does well. They don't have those moments where it's like, why did we just run that play? I've watched almost every single game of theirs on the All-22. There's not many moments where I'm like, why did they just do that? And that's why they're so good. They don't make those mistakes on the field, and their coaching doesn't really make mistakes either.
Landon Tengwall is a former Penn State offensive lineman, also hosts the Landon Tengwall Show. You need to go find it on YouTube. Also follow him on Twitter at Landon Tengwall. Just an amazing follow, amazing up-and-coming college football analyst who's breaking down X's and O's almost better than anybody. Landon, let's switch sides. Let's talk about the Miami offensive line, because there's been a lot out there about the size difference between Miami's offensive line and Indiana's defensive line. And I don't know whether to buy into that or not. Should I?
Look, yes and no. The Indiana defensive line they're so good at what they do. And yes, I think the heaviest guy is Tariq Tucker at 302 pounds. So what they do is, and I'll have a full film breakdown out this on tomorrow. Whenever you watch this, it'll be out Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to do a full film breakdown on their stunts and their blitzes and how they slant. They are incredibly gap sound. The other piece of that too is, I know we're talking D-line, but the linebackers behind them might just be, most people said Ohio State probably had the best linebacking combo, but the 3 guys back there that they have, and Aiden Fisher, Elijah Hardy, and then Isaiah Jones, those 3 guys are damn ball players. So that they also make the defensive line look even better because they have straight up guys back there that know exactly what they're doing. Now, these smaller guys, at times you can just move them out of the way, But why they're smaller and why they fit the scheme is they are trying to slant guys. They're going to let someone penetrate right here, and someone is going to loop around. And so there's a lot of communication that goes into that for the offensive line. Like, you have to be on your P's and Q's, and there's a lot of trust that goes into it too, that if someone slants, if I'm the right guard and I have something slant across my face, I have to trust, and I'm trusting Francis Mauigoa more than anybody in the damn world, but I got to trust that Francis Mauigoa is going to be in that gap, and he's going to see that slanting. So I think that's the biggest thing, and that's what's hard is if offensive lines, communication, and trust isn't perfect, Indiana will take advantage of that all day long on the front seven. And so they're good at just shooting those gaps, getting vertical, and just creating some disruption up front. Now, they've done it where they have guys getting injured. Like they're down 2 starting defensive linemen from the start of the year, Daly inside, and then Wyatt at defensive end. And it's like it doesn't matter. And they just keep playing at an extremely high level. But they're going to try to do those stunts. They're going to pick a guy and loop a guy around. So the biggest thing I'm looking at, and look, I was recruited by Mirabal. I think he is, if not the best offensive line coach, he's one of them, because he's always been ahead of the game. Something that he teaches, especially against a slant-heavy, a stunt-heavy defensive line, is a lot of times you'll see this Miami offensive line, like they fire out. Don't get me wrong, they are physical, they are nasty, but sometimes you'll see that first step is almost like a trigger step, and it's a hesitation because they're waiting. They're waiting for the defensive line to kind of declare the gap they're trying to slant into, and they almost do this thing where they take them where they want to go. If you want to cross my face on the slant and go into the B gap, that's cool. I'm going to take you and I'm going to drive you and take you where you want to go, because that's the easiest way to do it. Now, like I said, you can create havoc by doing that for this Indiana front seven, but you can also get creased. Like, it's called creasing the stunt. They run this stunt and you pick it up perfectly, and you pick up the linebacker and the defensive lineman that's moving, and there's this huge cavity for the running back to get through. And I don't want to see Mark Fletcher in the hole with 7 yards of untouched just buildup. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing in this run game. And we know Miami has to run the football, is this movement by these defensive linemen. Like, that's what they're going to do, 50+% of the time. They're not going to just play into you like you've seen from some of these other defensive linemen that Miami's won up against. They're going to try to move. They're going to stunt. They're going to try to confuse you and really test your rules as an offensive line.
Let me ask you one more question, which is, we've seen Miami win in different ways. We've seen them, especially in the playoff in the first few games, rely heavily on Mark Fletcher in the run, and then Marty Brown to come in and spell him and just grind it. And then the last game, they relied a little more on Carson Beck to get things done with his arm. And then in the last drive, it was Carson running into the end zone to glory. What if you were Shannon Dawson in the University of Miami offensive staff? How do you attack this Indiana defense? What are you relying on in this game to try to get you the points to be on top at the end?
Yeah, well, look, like when I was doing my Oregon-Indiana preview, I was like, look, Oregon come out and take the underneath stuff, because what I've seen from tape for the most part on Indiana is that they're going to, at least at the start of the game, give you that underneath stuff. Now, that is also what Dante Moore thought until he threw a pick six on the first play, because D'Angelo Pons just absolutely jumped the route. Now, it was also a bad route by the wide receiver. It was a bad throw. He left it low and behind him. But that's the first thing I'm looking for if I'm Carson Beck and company, is are they giving me that off coverage stuff? Because Indiana, they don't play a ton of man coverage. They are huge cover 2, cover 3. We're going to zone drop. And like you kind of know what they're going to do, but they just do it so damn well. It's so difficult. So that's the first thing I'm looking at. And that's what Miami's lived in all year. That's why Carson Beck has the quickest time to throw of any Power 4 quarterback, because they like to get into the quick game. They love the screens. That's one other thing that I'm looking at too, is look, these screens and big gains on those screens that, you threw to Malachi Toney. And it was something that Miami was trying to hit on a ton against Ole Miss, where they pulled a guard to the right to try to grab the eyes of the defense and think, oh, they're running, counter or power to the right. And then they throw the wide receiver screen to the left and all the linemen get out. That was the Malachi Toney touchdown. Right. But they also ran it like 7 or 8 times in that game. And so sometimes it didn't work. Now, the biggest thing that you're the struggle against this Indiana defense is they're the best tackling defense in America. of their 11 starters, you compute all of their missed tackle rates across the board. It's a 10% missed tackle rate for the entire defense. That is borderline elite. That's crazy. And you got guys in the low single digits. So they don't miss a lot of tackles. So when you do block plays up perfectly and you do get those screen passes that break, you better take advantage and you better hit those things. So I don't think that scheme changes a whole ton. You're going to get the quick stuff. You're going to get the quick hitches. You're going to get the quick outs. You're going to get the wide receiver screens. You're going to get Tony on jet passes. And then Carson Beck is going to take his shots deep like he always has. So that's still what I expect to see. I think the number one thing that you're just looking at for this offense is like, yeah, you have to run the ball if you're Miami. And that's where some teams have really struggled against this Indiana front seven to run the ball. And some teams have actually found some pretty good success. And so if I had to pick an offensive line to have success and a running back room to have success, I think Miami is the one to look at. Because once again, not only are they just big, this isn't just a big offensive line. And I think that's a lot of fans that don't know Miami. It's like, oh, they're just like big oafs, like they can't move well. Like all these guys can move. They can absolutely move. And so like my biggest thing is, like I said, can you pick up these stunts? And there's going to be plays that are somewhat negative. But can Mark Fletcher break a couple tackles where that -2 turns into a +2? So instead of 2nd and 12, we're sitting in 2nd and 8. And I think that's the important. And like I said, generally you want way more yards. I'm just saying, can you minimize those negative plays? Because that's really what Indiana does. They minimize all the negative aspects of the game. And if they have a bad play, it feels like it turns into a no gain or just a gain of 1 yard. And so that's what I'm looking for from this Miami offense and the run game. It's a run game you're going to have to lean on, and you're just going to have to out-physical these guys, which it's felt like Miami has gotten to do that in every single game where they just get to, especially as you get deeper into it, just start to lean on that physicality of the rushing attack. And not to mention the wide receivers that are blocking. I mean, that's my favorite part about this, where you're getting CJ Daniels on the insert block. You're getting Malachi Toney absolutely just wants to be a pest, and he blocks through the whistle. I haven't seen someone that young and that small be that great of a blocker ever, maybe at wide receiver. Like it's crazy. And I love how they do it with just a tenacity. So, I mean, every piece of this Miami offense is physical. That's the nature that they live within. So I don't see them changing in this one. It's just now, can you out physical the most sound defense in America? And so that's what I'm looking at. So that's why I think it's such an exciting battle. But I think you look at it, it's like, yeah, you might be able to move these guys off the football. But when they do slant and they do run those twists and stunts, can you pick those up and minimize any negative plays?
Wow, yeah, that's, I think, going to be key for Miami. That's a really good, look at things. I think from the fundamental standpoint, Indiana football this year reminds me of Miami basketball from a few years ago when we went to the Final Four, where we had one of the oldest teams in America. And they do too. Like they have a lot of like grown men. They have like 22, 23, 24, 25. And like it's the world of college football, but that experience, that wisdom that comes with age, it just allows them to say, hey, I'm going to do my job because I'm not that 18-year-old who thinks I need to be Superman and go make every play. If I do my role, then either I'm going to make the play if it's there or somebody else will. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. In terms of Miami's passing offense, my final question for you is this. Starting tight end Elijah Lofton might not play, from Cristobal's comments the other day. He had that over route that he caught across the middle against Ole Miss and got blasted, and then left the game and did not return, was carted off into the locker room. Cristobal, who is always careful with his words about injuries, said, yeah, all these other dudes are going to play. The one who I would be concerned about was Elijah Lofton, which tells me he's probably not going to play. So with him removed from the set of players in the passing game, specifically for Miami, because it's not that big, great of a blocker, how can and who can Miami look to replace some of those interior routes between the numbers, the intermediate stuff that, Lofton would make available to Carson Beck? How can we kind of utilize the other players to cover that loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that you're looking at, I noticed this early in the Ohio State game. I think there was 3 attempts in the first 2 drives to get the ball to Mark Fletcher on some like quick curl routes. And I think like 2 of them actually got batted down. Mm-hmm. So I do see Mark Fletcher probably getting, and Brown getting more involved in this passing game. But I mean, look, Beck his anticipation all playoffs long has been really good. I mean, a lot of these passes, even over the middle, outside, the ball is leaving his hand before the wide receiver is in or out of their break. And that's what's been so impressive to me, that he is just in tune. So, I think you supplement that with a couple more, running back passes. But I don't think it changes too much of the game plan. And he has been like, like I said, some of these passes over the middle, especially to Marion, like they have been exactly where they need to be on the face mask, on time too. So I've seen Carson Beck like read the field well. And that's especially because I broke down the final 15 play drive. And what I saw was someone that was confident going through his reads. And a lot of quarterbacks don't do that anymore, especially in college football. They just ask them to read one side of the field, or they just ask them, hey, we're just looking at this one route. You're either throwing it or like taking off. Like that's what it is now. And that's why it pays off to have a veteran quarterback like Carson Beck that has been in the game for a while, because you're in these high stress situations. You're in 3rd and 7, and he can read the entire field and get all the way back to his deep in route on the backside and fire it in there. That happened multiple times on the last drive. I think you faced 3 or 4 third down conversions on that final 15 play drive against Ole Miss. So I think that's something to look for. And then the other piece is, so you don't have your best tight end target. I think we're going to continue to see Carson Beck use his legs. That's something that we've seen more than anything, really take a jump in the playoffs, is how much Carson Beck has just run the football, because he sees an opening. It's like he is, I'm laying it all on the line. We've seen him put his throwing shoulder into someone. So that's something I'd look for too. If he started to really get into the, okay, read 1, not there, read 2, not there, boom, I'm taking off. That's what I would expect to see. And that's something that, like, honestly, Mendoza does a lot of. And Carson Beck, I think his athleticism has been almost underrated. Not to say he's like an elite athlete, but it's clear like he can scoot a little bit. So I think that's something I look out for too. If I'm this Indiana defense, I'm aware of the fact that Carson Beck is just kind of taking off. It feels like at a higher rate than he really was in the regular season.
Wow. You know more about football than I have even begun to dream about. And that's why we have you on the show. Landon Tengwall, just amazing stuff. Now is the money question. Do you have a prediction for the game?
Oh man, I haven't even given one yet. I've thought all the way about it. Oh man. I think it's going to be a 3-point game. I have a feeling this is going to end on a field goal. That's my prediction. Yeah, I know.
Let me bring my blood pressure medication to the stadium.
Give me, like, I'm huge. I'm a trenches guy. I think the biggest thing that's going to impact this game is that Mendoza is going to feel a pressure that he's never felt before. And this is a guy that is great at, like I said, taking off and running when he needs to. And he also, the other piece of why his game's so good is because he throws away the ball when he needs to as well. It's not always like, I'm going to try to tuck it and run. It's, I'm going to find a way to get rid of this football too, and then not make it 2nd and 15, and we're going to get back to 2nd and 10. So can you force him into some of those mistakes, make him take those sacks and make them be behind the sticks? And I predict that does happen. And that's why it is going to be Miami 17, Indiana 14.
Oh, wow.
Low score,
tight game. Oh, none of it is good for my heart. But
the end. Hello, did you not hear that part?
Well, yeah, but by then I'll have to be resuscitated 27 times.
That's okay. Hey, I sit next to you in the press box. I'm CPR certified, bro. Like,
oh, perfect.
Come on, exactly. And at the end, then the tickers is, you get that release of the tension, and it's just nice, easy sinus rhythm. We're good, bro. Come on.
Yeah, I like it, Landon. We so appreciate you taking the time. Definitely look us up when you get down here to Florida. Let's do it in person. And let's urge everybody, go check out Landon's film breakdowns, his show, everything else. Go look him up on YouTube, Landon Tengwall. Go look him up on Twitter. This guy is, listen, before we know it, he's going to be on all your national networks doing all the Saturday shows and everything. And we'll just be like the little putzes that interviewed him.
That one time
remember that? Remember that time?
With the little people and whatnot. We connected on on social media and everything going back and forth. Honestly and truly, like, the content speaks for itself. That's what caught my attention when I started seeing your account on Twitter and everything, man. So definitely thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Yeah, like I said, when you come down to Naples, it's a 90-minute drive. Just let us know. And then hopefully, that'll be after the season. So we'll all wear our Hurricane stuff and be celebrating the championship with a beer on the beach. Come on.
Dude, let's do it. Let's do it. I real quick, I really appreciate those words, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I don't know why I've been on. I think it's like my fiance got me on Poshmark earlier this year. I saw this sweet Miami, like it must have been from like the 90s, 2000s, like tracksuit. And I have it. And like, she was like, why did you buy this? And this is like July or August. And I'm like, it was like $35. And I'm like, this is sweet. Yeah. I'm gonna have to put it on. I don't know. The Indiana fans are gonna hate because I try to be an unbiased figure, but it's hard not to root for this Miami team. I'm excited, man. I will definitely hit you guys up when I am in town in February. We'll get together, film something. But good luck. I'm excited to continue to watch the coverage, man. You guys do an awesome job.
Landon, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate you. We'll check everybody out next time right here on the Real Ones Canes podcast. Peace.